Okay, can I just get confirmation that everyone can see my screen and hear me?
Yes, we can see your screen, Yasmin, and the video and your audio is clear for us. Okay, I think that we can start now. Let me start from my side to introduce the webinar and MENA blockchain. I just need to check something. Just 1 minute. Okay. أهلا بحضراتكم جميعا ويوم جديد من أيام الويبينار الخاص بالتحديات والأبعاد الاقتصادية للعملات الرقمية. طبعا احنا خلال المحاضرة السابقة أمس كنا اتكلمنا عن مقدمة لمفاهيم الخاصة بتكنولوجيا البلوك تشين والعملات الرقمية، وناقشنا المفاهيم الأساسية المرتبطة بالكريبتو كارنسيز أو العملات المشفرة، واتكلمنا طبعا عن اشهر 3 امثله للعملات المتواجده في الماركت بليس الخاص بالكريبتو كارنسي. اتكلمنا عن البيتكوين، استعرضنا جزئيه الايثر او عمله الايثر الخاصه بالايثيريوم، ومؤخرا ناقشنا عمله الاكس ار بي اللي هي تابعه للريبل. وطبعا ناقشنا بعض اليوز كيسز الخاصه ببعض العملات زي الاكس ار بي في الاندستري، والتشالنجز المرتبطه بتطبيق الجزء الخاص بالكريبتو كرنسي واستخدامها. ووضحنا طبعا ان العائق الاساسي او المين تشالنج الخاص بالابلكيشن اللي الكريبتو كرنسي هو جزئيه الريجوليشنز او التشريعات الخاصه بالدوله او المؤسسات فيما يتعلق باستخدام الاكسشينج او تداول وتطبيق الكريبتو كرنسي. النهارده ان شاء الله احنا هنتناقش ان ديتيلز عن جزئيه الريجوليتور او ريجوليشنز الخاصه بالكريبتو كرنسي، وهنستعرضها مع مسز ياسمين ابراهيم، وانا سعيد جدا بوجودها معانا النهارده في الويبينار. و طبعا زي ما حضراتكم عارفين مده السيشن قد تكون ساعه او ساعه ونص از ماكسيمم، وديورنج الويبينار بيكون all participant muted. لو في اي حد من حضراتكم عنده اي سؤال او استفسار يا ريت لو يقدروا يشاركوا معانا من خلال الزوم تشات، واحنا ان شاء الله هنهندل كل الاسئله دي. بترك المجال لياسمين لابداء الويبينار، وبالتوفيق ان شاء الله. ياسمين.
شكرا.
Thanks.
So المحاضرة أنا هتكلم بالإنجليزي عشان يعني دراستي كلها وشغلي مش بالعربي، بس لو حد عنده سؤال أو عايزني أعيد على حاجة بشكل تاني بليز قولوا لشريف، علشان أنا ما عنديش مش هشوف الكومنتس وأنا sharing السكرين دلوقتي and هحاول أوضح. So today I hope you guys get a better sense of the regulatory status of virtual currency and virtual currency businesses, and so we'll do the regulations, and then towards the end we'll also touch a little bit on stable coins and central bank digital currencies or state-owned digital currencies. So let's start with some terminology I'm going to be using throughout the presentation. Virtual currency, VCs are virtual currencies or digital currencies. AML-CTF is anti-money laundering or counter-terrorist financing. Money laundering or terrorist financing is ML or TF. VASPs refer to cryptocurrency businesses. FATF, Financial Action Task Force, published, there's a detailed definition of it, but I'll just be using the term to cover every type of cryptocurrency business that's subject to anti-money laundering regulations, whether it's an exchange, a hosted wallet, a peer-to-peer exchange, Bitcoin ATMs, crypto investment funds, financial authority or financial regulator, whatever government body is in charge with establishing the rules and regulation for and monitoring of the financial sector in a particular country. MSBs are money service businesses, traditional money service business included, and Financial Action Task Force. It's the international regulatory body that establishes policies and promotes the effective implementation of the legal, regulatory, and operational measures to combat ML and TF activities. They have, there's the FATF's 40+9 recommendations, and they're seen as the global standard. FATF provides the framework that countries should implement in order to combat money laundering, terrorist financing, the financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, bribery, corruption, but it doesn't take enforcement actions and it doesn't get involved with prosecutions. Sorry, this image is a little blurry, but the countries in green are FATF members, and MENA has a FATF organization. It's not a FATF member, but it has the same goals as FATF does. So in order for the movement of funds to be considered money laundering, there has to be an underlying crime. We call this a predicate offense. Could be bribery, drug trafficking, human trafficking, market manipulation, insider trading, fraud, tax evasion. The act where the proceeds of crime are transferred with the intent to conceal the origin of the funds or the ultimate destination, or try to obscure the connection between the perpetrator is considered money laundering. With money laundering, the origins of the funds are illicit, but this is not necessarily true for terrorist financing. With terrorist financing, the source of funds can be illicit, such as funds derived from organized crime, or it could be legal. It could be someone's salary or saving, and they use a portion of that to donate to an organization considered a terrorist financing organization. Countries and financial institutions are required to have proper AML CFT controls in place. They have to be able to detect, deter, and report on possible proceeds of crime and potential money laundering incidents, sanctions violations, bribery, corruption, and activities relating to the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. If a financial institution fails to establish the appropriate policies, procedures, and controls, or is found to be neglectful or willfully blind, civil and criminal penalties apply. And not just to the organization, individuals can be held liable too. And I'm sure you guys have seen before in the news, tens of millions of dollars fines for a well-known, well-established bank for AML deficiencies. Financial institutions are regularly monitored and audited, and countries are risk rated based on their level of compliance with the FATF recommendations or the minimum standards set out by other regional or jurisdictional regulatory bodies. Countries and financial institutions use a risk-based approach in order to prioritize the appropriate mitigation measures in accordance with the level of risk. This gives the flexibility and allows for more efficient use of resources when mitigating ML and TF risk. This is a visualization of the risk-based approach. This was done by FINTRAC, the regulatory body in Canada. And it's just, so you have to assess your products and services. What kind of risk does your unique product, what kind of unique risk does your product have? Geography is important. So like I said before, the countries are risk rated. There's low risk countries, there's high risk countries. There's countries that are more susceptible to bribery and corruption. There's countries that have a higher risk for terrorist financing activities. Lower risk countries have well-established AML programs in place with their financial institutions and regulatory body. It enforces the regulations, and activity with a lower jurisdiction might be deemed, uh, might be more within your risk tolerance. Um, Step two, like if you were one of the first banks to allow virtual currency VASP customers, virtual asset service provider customers, or cryptocurrency businesses to bank with you, you may identify the fact that your risk tolerance is greater and you're okay operating with that greater level of risk. But then you create risk reduction measures and implement controls to manage that risk. The risk-based approaches also apply to investigations. You don't just conduct a detailed analysis of the transactions and patterns you see in an account or for your cryptocurrency business. You also want to look at your clients in a holistic view, taking into account things like nature of employment, nature of business, jurisdiction, the nature of the banking product that or service that you're offering, and the customer's own historical transaction behavior and the customer's behavior with maybe your staff. This is a risk-based investigation model for specific when you're conducting an investigation on an account. So not too long ago, virtual currencies and VASPs were seen as toxic and primarily used for drug trafficking and other criminal activities. Virtual currency related businesses were often operating in a gray legal area and had a lot of difficulty opening and maintaining bank accounts. Legitimate cryptocurrency exchanges actually wanted financial authorities to look into regulating the industry, so there can be more financial inclusion and to protect the consumer against illegitimate actors too, such as investment scams. To a large extent, these crypto exchanges were voluntarily running their own comprehensive anti-money laundering programs, and in a lot of cases, reporting suspicious activities, or SARS, suspicious activity reports, to the regulator. This is because maybe the apprehension was because it was a new technology and the products built on the blockchain, virtual currencies, or even securities were not yet widely understood. There was no legal or regulatory framework that governed virtual currencies. And traditional financial institutions feared exposure to potential money laundering and terrorist financing risk. Now, leading financial authorities around the world not only welcome the new technology, they have included VASPs and virtual currencies within their existing regulatory framework. So treating them as a traditional financial service provider, thereby subjecting them to similar anti-money laundering and terrorist financing requirements. Or there's jurisdictions that acknowledge the need for providing regulatory frameworks that are specific to virtual currencies. Like Singapore and Estonia, they have specific cryptocurrency licenses, and Canada allows VASPs to become licensed as a money service business. But the cryptocurrency business license isn't the only one in, sorry, it wasn't Singapore, Switzerland. Singapore. Singapore has the cryptocurrency business. Switzerland has one too. They have a fintech license, they have an exchange license, they have an investment fund license, banking license. Those are all licenses available for cryptocurrency businesses in Switzerland. I like this graph. It's by CipherTrace. They published it in January 2019. We're August 2020, so this graph is outdated, but it shows you how far regulations have come. By January 2020, all these jurisdictions, FinCEN is an American, the U.S. Financial Regulatory Authority. SEC is the Security Exchange Commission. FATF is the International Financial Action Task Force. G20 countries, the European Union, they all expected enforced compliance by January 2020. Countries had to have their regulatory framework in place for virtual currency businesses to be able to operate legally within the defined framework and have their anti-money laundering and terrorist financing programs in place. And enforced compliance also means that if you're a virtual currency business and you're not you're a money service business and you're not licensed or you don't have the proper AML controls, then you can face civil or criminal liability. Yeah, so the AMLD5 law enforce for the EU, that's the 5th money laundering directive in the EU, and it was improving upon the 4th AML directive. And the 5th one included the virtual currency business related regulations. So now VASPs have largely been integrated in the traditional global financial system, and there's a lot of cooperation between regulatory bodies, the private sector, and other stakeholders like central banks. This is known as public-private partnerships. And consultation is ongoing as regulators evolve to embrace new technology. A great example of a successful public-private partnership is Project Protect, and it started out in Canada. Project Protect was a joint initiative between banks and Canadian banks and law enforcement to try to make a dent in the human trafficking activities in Canada, and it became it's now a global project. It's in Europe, it's in the US. Project Protect, it's led to a lot of arrests. It's led to an increased percentage of people that actually end up getting prosecuted for these crimes, and a lot of sex trafficking victims were saved because of the information banks were able to provide law enforcement, and how these suspicious activity reports were treated with a high sense of urgency. So cooperation like this, it's also prevalent in the crypto world between the regulated cryptocurrency exchanges and law enforcement. We don't just report suspicious activity to regulators. We also work with law enforcement. The industry as a whole works with law enforcement, especially on heinous crimes like child exploitation material. And what you're seeing on your screen is an investigation done by Chainalysis. They helped law enforcement take down Welcome to Video. Welcome to Video is an organization that exploited children and bought and sold child sexual exploitation material on the dark web, and they were recently shut down with the help of Chainalysis. And also there was a lot of cross-border law enforcement cooperation. Many jurisdictions were involved, several children were saved from their abusers, and hundreds of perpetrators were identified. Bitcoin is not anonymous, it's pseudonymous, and I'm sure a lot of you have already heard this before. Illicit funds can, in fact, be traced to the perpetrators, and a recent study showed that only about 1.1% of the total cryptocurrency volume was deemed to be illicit. the majority of crypto-related crimes were scams, and scams accounted for $8.6 billion. This doesn't include the three largest Ponzi schemes, Plus Token, BitConnect, and OneCoin. These scams account for 0.46% of all cryptocurrency activities. And in my opinion, cash is still king. It's largely untraceable until it's placed in a financial institution, and organized crime and other criminal activities still largely depend on cash. So I'm sure a lot of you heard about the Twitter scam recently, where there was a Twitter hack and a lot of accounts got, Obama's account got hacked, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Apple, a lot of business leaders' accounts were targeted. So the person accused of leading this hack is this 17-year-old Graham Ivan Clark from Florida. He now faces 30 charges and up to 200 years in prison. He also had two accomplices. So the perpetrators allegedly asked people to send funds to a specific Bitcoin wallet address, promising high returns. The FBI found data on a hacking website related to, they were able to trace it back to them, and they also traced the funds. They traced the Bitcoin transactions all the way to a cryptocurrency exchange, Coinbase. What usually happens next is that the exchange would get served with a court order or a warrant or a subpoena, and then work with the law enforcement agent, and handing over any of the relevant material. In this case, the investigators obtained the perpetrators' driver's licenses and were able to move ahead with the arrest on July 31st. So this is where, like, this cryptocurrency exchange is regulated. They have an AML program. They have KYC requirements. They require their customers to submit identification. They verify this identification, and so when bad actors are using a cryptocurrency business to conduct for money laundering or terrorist financing activities, we're able to actually trace it and report on it. So FATF is currently working on improving international cooperation among VASP regulators, especially when it comes to information sharing between different jurisdictions. For the purposes of applying the FATF recommendations, FATF recommends that countries should consider virtual assets to be property, proceeds, funds, or other assets of corresponding value. Countries should apply a risk-based approach to ensure that the measures used to prevent or mitigate MLTF activities match with the level of risk identified from the assessment of VASP and virtual currency related activities. They recommend that VASP should be required to be licensed or registered. And if you want access to this FATF report, I can send the link to it later. I think it was just published 1 or 2 months ago. So does anyone have any questions so far? Sharif, are you getting any?
Yes, thanks, Yasmin, for sharing this fruitful information with us. I just need to confirm if anyone from our attendants, even in Facebook, have any question in order to handle through our session. You can ask in Arabic and I will handle it with Yasmin. Okay, I think Yasmin, we can go ahead now. And if anyone have a question, I will share it with you. Okay.
So stablecoins. Stablecoins are basically digital assets that mimic the price of a fiat currency or a cryptocurrency or a commodity. It allows users to move funds around the world very cheaply, very quickly, while maintaining the price stability, provides liquidity in the cryptocurrency markets. It allows users to transact and store assets without the fear of price fluctuation. People that do arbitrage trading between cryptocurrencies like to have a stable coin to park their funds. And it's a bridge between the financial institutions and crypto. It's usually an on-ramp or an off-ramp for investors to switch their funds between their traditional bank account and the crypto world. These are some of the stable coins that are out there, and there's a few categories they fall into. Fiat-backed stable coins. Tether is obviously the biggest one out there with the market. When backed, you pay $1 US for one of that cryptocurrency, or euro, or Australian, and you get one stable coin in return. Fiat-backed stablecoins have to be centralized because someone has to be trusted to administer the funds, issue the stable coins when the fiat is received, or burn the stable coins when there's a fiat redemption and a wire out to your bank account. There's crypto-backed stable coins. So this is when you use other cryptocurrencies to purchase your stable coins. They're less stable because they're subject to the price fluctuation in the market. Excuse me. What happens is you end up over collateralizing the asset in order to hedge against the risk of market fluctuation. And these can be centralized or decentralized. Asset or commodity-backed stable coins is when you pay fiat in return for a certain amount of gold, for example, or silver, oil, diamond. Could be a piece of real estate in New York. Like fiat-based stablecoins, these two have to be centralized. Algorithm-backed stablecoins are not collateralized with any asset. They have it's a logic that's coded into smart contracts, and it tries to mimic the function of a traditional bank. They're independent from any other currency, so they're not pegged with any digital currency or fiat currency. It aims to provide stability, and they're not incentivized to inflate or deflate any currency. Basis right now is one of the leaders in this area, but the risk is if there isn't a lot of trust in that currency, then it can fall to zero really fast because there's nothing backing it up. A regulatory challenge for stablecoins is they can be often accused of lacking transparency, or they can have their collateralization questioned. Does this company really have US dollars or whatever the currency is to back up the amount of issuances they have? And this is one thing where if it's done responsibly and in conjunction with the private sector, regulation can help with that. So central bank digital currencies. Central banks right now, or governments are seriously considering blockchain solutions to conduct real-time payments and settlements around the clock. This includes stock trades. They're studying the digitalization of state-issued fiat currencies. So basically, the US issuing a US dollar that's on the blockchain, or China. So a part of the reason why they're thinking about this is the efficiency and how cheap it can be, and transactions can happen instantaneously around the clock. When you use your credit card to pay for something at a store, for example, there's a message that's sent to another company and it's processed by a lot of computers before the transaction is actually settled on your bank's ledger. And it might take days before it's settled. It might not get settled over the weekend, for example, or long holidays. But with cryptocurrencies, the payments and the settlement is an instantaneous transaction. So your payment and the ledger record that shows that that transaction is settled happens in the same transaction, in the same action. So this might have been because of Facebook's Libra announcement, that a number of central banks started really researching central bank digital currencies, its benefits, its challenges, because Libra caused a threat in terms of anti-money laundering and TF and sanctions weaknesses, and there's a possibility of losing control or having a lack of oversight of those activities. There can be an attitude too, like if it's not broken, why fix it? But the efficiencies digital currencies can bring has the potential to provide financial inclusion too in less developed countries, and not just digitizing currency, but also digitizing a lot of the contracts we have in our life, insurance, real estate. Let's say, for example, a government dictator takes office in a developing country and comes to you and says, like, you have a paper that says you own this farm, but that doesn't mean anything because our records show that my friend owns the farm. And this problem happens a lot in a lot of developing nations, or it exists everywhere. But having a valid title to your land in these countries is sometimes more important than even having access to a bank account. If the land titles are on the blockchain, it becomes immutable. There's no you can never change that record. And just it's one way that the blockchain can really provide solutions to people that aren't already part of the traditional financial system. There's the G7 working group on stablecoins. They recommend that a roadmap be created to support initiatives to improve cross-border payments. They recommend the promotion of financial inclusion and improving the coordination between authorities domestically and cross-border through strong regulatory cooperation and harmonizing standards, and establishing information sharing arrangements between relevant authorities. This is when it comes to stablecoins in general, not just central bank digital currencies. There's at least 40 central banks actually that they're currently either expecting or researching and experimenting with central bank digital currencies. When you think about it, fiat currency is already a digital currency, whether it's the US dollar or Egyptian pound. Usually less than 10% of the currency that is distributed in the economy or in circulation is physical. Only the rest of the 90% is digital. The difference between the current technology that these currencies use is just databases and ledgers, how the information is stored. Right now it's stored in a database in a central bank or retail banks that keep account ledgers stored in what's essentially a centralized database. But if, yeah, so blockchain, you can have a decentralized digital currency, but if there's a central bank digital currency, it won't be decentralized, it will be centralized. You have to have oversight when it comes to, you know, like it can't be censorship resistant, for example, because there can provide a lot of efficiency. Own central currency. And the US, I believe, right now is researching it. So that's it for my presentation. I left maybe 10 minutes or so if there's any questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Yasmin, again for sharing with us this insightful information regarding to the regulations about cryptocurrencies and stable coins definition, and some information about the digital currencies for central banks. Okay, I just need from our participant, if anyone have a question, just you can share with us. You can type it in Arabic or English as you like in the chat, and I will handle it with Yasmin to answer it. I just get just one question from Ahmed Adel. He asking about if we are going to cover the Egyptian landscape later or not. I think, Ahmed, that we already discuss the regulations regarding to cryptocurrencies and the cryptocurrency situation in Egypt and in Middle East in details. It was yesterday our first session regarding to the cryptocurrency. Maybe later, inshallah, we are going to repeat this webinar and cover again the Egyptian and MENA landscape in detail. Okay.
So I think Egypt has it banned. I believe it's still banned. But Egypt is moving. I think they're still in the research phase. They're moving towards. I think in the future the ban will be lifted, and Egypt will allow virtual currency businesses to operate and grow. But it's called the sunrise effect, and there's countries on a big spectrum. There's countries that where it's like very regulated right now, and it's part of the traditional financial world. There's countries that have a straight up ban and don't see themselves ever lifting that ban, and there's countries in the middle. I think Egypt is one of those countries in the middle where they're still in the process of understanding the technology before they lift the ban and customize the regulations to include FASPs.
Yes, totally agree, Yasmin, that till now there is no regulations or clear regulation regarding to the cryptocurrencies exchange or trading in Egypt. It's only banned here in Egypt. And I remember that the first company that was established regarding to exchange and trading in Egypt, that was called before Egypt Bitcoin. This company once it's established, but after 1 month, I remember it has been closed and banned according to the regulations of the central bank here in Egypt. So till now, there is no clear regulations regarding to the exchange and the trading of cryptocurrencies in Egypt. But we hope in the next years that we can get clear regulations regarding to this technology.
Right.
Okay, so if anyone from our participant on Zoom or Facebook have any question regarding to our webinar today. Thanks a lot, Dr. Harim. Dr. Harim, thank you for attendance with us today. Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Yes. I just check again if anyone from the participants or from our Facebook page have any question. You can type it in Arabic or English, and we can handle it with Yasmin. Okay, I think Yasmin that we have done here. Okay, again, I need to thank you, Yasmin, for attendance with us today and for sharing this insightful information with our community. Regarding to the recorded session, it will be shared with our participants through the Facebook page and our YouTube channel within the next 24 hours, inshallah. And if you have any problem or inquiry regarding to the webinar, you can contact us anytime through our Facebook page. Also, I need to remind our participants that we have another session tomorrow, inshallah, at the same time, 8 p.m. Cairo time, with Dr. Halim Shaheen, and he is going to discuss the feature or the economic feature for Bitcoin as one of the top cryptocurrencies in the marketplace. So thanks a lot again, Yasmin, and thanks a lot for all the participants, and looking forward to see you again in other meetups and webinars.
Awesome. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Yasmin. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.